No, I'm going to actually move around. Is that going to be a problem? Okay. I'll try not to move as much. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning. After this morning's talk by Isabel Campoy, I think we're energized, right? So thank you so much for being here today. My name is Ruby Flores. I'm the Acting Director for Professional Learning at CABE, which is the California Association for Bilingual Education. And so today we want to present to you a tool that, along with partners, we've developed to support the implementation of best practices in dual language classrooms. So before we get started, because you will be interacting with your peers, we'll ask you to make sure that you're sitting at a table with some people around you, and also because we have materials at the table. So if you'll join us closer to the front, so you can have some peers to interact with and also access to the materials. We're going to start, and I want to start with some introductions, and I'll give you a little bit about my background. Again, I'm the Acting Director for Professional Learning at CABE, and I have background in dual language education as a teacher. Also, back when transitional bilingual education was in our schools, I was also a transitional bilingual teacher. But then dual language thankfully came along, and I taught as a teacher, but then also I was an instructional coach and worked with curriculum supporting districts, and I was I've also been a consultant supporting districts around California in the implementation of their programs. So that's a little bit about me, but I want you to take a few minutes, just a couple minutes, and introduce yourselves to the people at your table because you're going to be collaborating with them, okay? So I'll give you about a couple of minutes, and I'll check back in. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. Okay, let's take a few more seconds, make sure everybody introduced themselves. Okay, and you know, we know that the best resource for an educator is another educator, right? So one great thing about these conferences and these opportunities to interact with others is that you get to hear other perspectives and ideas from your peers. So feel free to, throughout the presentation, share ideas, share what you do, because that's how we learn best, right? So just a few norms. We're only going to be here for an hour and a half, a little bit less now, but just to make sure everybody gets the most out of this hour and a half. Let's be present. Let's silent our technology, which I did myself. I will be walking around with my phone just to make sure I'm on time. But then also, if you have any phone calls that you get because we're stepping out, we're stepping away from our classrooms and our schools, please feel free to take that time. Just make sure it's outside so it's not disrupting the group. And then also, this is my signal to get your attention back because you will be interacting. So as you see it, can you please also do it with me? That way everybody can see it. And let's be aware of side conversations just to make sure that everybody gets the information. Lastly, we're going to take risks, okay? Because that's what we want our kids to do. And for us to be able to do it and model it, then we have to practice, okay? So we will be taking some linguistic and social risks today. So let's get started in just a little bit about CABE. CABE is the California Association for Bilingual Education, and we've been an organization that's been advocating for support for English learners and biliteracy programs for almost 45 years this year. So we've been around for a while, and we've gone through ups and downs in California, but with knowing and understanding the importance of bilingualism and supporting the vision, which is biliteracy, multicultural education, and of course, most importantly, equality for all students is what has it's what has kept us going. So with that said, our department, CABE, Professional Development Services, we provide support, consulting work, support to schools, districts, but we also do coaching and professional development with districts to make sure that their language programs are implemented according to what the research says, right? That we're following what the research says, and also that we're complying with the policies and supporting our English learner programs, which in California we are proud to say that we are moving along to really value the assets that students bring, which is, a lot of it is their culture and their language. And so we want to continue to support districts on that, and also to continue to support the development of new biliteracy programs and existing biliteracy programs, which in Proposition 58 is allowing us to do in California. So we're very happy, we're very proud of where our state is moving, and CABE is it's committed to continue that movement. So that's just a little bit about CABE, and in the end our goal is to provide support so programs can be successful, sustainable, and strong. And this is our motto when we talk about building bilingual programs, English learner programs, but also dual language programs. So these are our guiding questions for today. Today we're going to look at how do the guiding principles support the implementation of strong, successful, and sustainable programs, but then we're also going to talk a little bit about how can stakeholders, administrators, community, parents, teachers, right? Everybody, how can we support teachers with the implementation of best practices in dual language programs? And to be able to do that, we have to know what those best practices are, right? So we need to be able to guide our teachers. So just very quickly, my quick pre-assessment, if you will show me with your fingers. One, how much do you know about what the guiding principles say about best practices in dual language classrooms? One, if you're not very sure, right? Or up to a 5, and if I can call on you, you can come help me co-present. So if you'll kind of just show me, because that helps me know how much we need a scaffold as teachers, right? Okay. So we have a pretty good mix of participants. Okay. So how do the guiding principles, and if you're not familiar with the guiding principles, we recommend that you become very familiar. In my book I use it a lot. So this document is it's a summary of the research that has been done on effective dual language programs. And it gives you several parts and it gives you several strands. And this was created in collaboration from the Center for Applied Linguistics in Washington, D.C., also from Dual Language New Mexico. They're also co-authors of the book, and other professionals and researchers. So this has been a work, and this is the 3rd edition. So there's been 2 editions prior to that, and this is the newest edition and the most updated research, okay? So if you're not familiar with it, I recommend that you become familiar with this. And it's divided in 7 different strands. And each strand gives you the recommendations for all these areas that as dual language administrators or teachers or district, right, we need to consider when implementing a dual language program. And it gives you the best practices on how to implement the program. And this is downloadable, actually. You can purchase it online from either Dual Language New Mexico or the Center for Applied Linguistics, or you can also download it for free. You just have to give them your email address and, right, promise you're not gonna sell it, right? But you can download it and have access to it for free. So I recommend that you look into it if you're not familiar with it. And this is just a little bit because it's gonna help us understand the journal that we're gonna look at, okay? So it has different parts. It has a program structure, not program structure, but it has a literature review that gives you the summary of what the research says. But then it also comes with rubrics. As a dual language program, how do you know that you're, right, what level you're on, right, when implementing your program? So it gives you the rubrics to be able to measure the implementation of your program on every single one of the 7 strands. So it's really helpful. It's a really helpful tool to, to analyze the implementation of your program overall, okay? So it has the 7 strands, but then it also has principles, and after each principle, there's also key points to every principle, right? So which is the interpretation of the research into practice. It has 4 descriptors that give you the information of, right, if you are reflecting on your program, it gives you an idea of where you are, and it's divided into those 4 descriptors. So all of this is to get us to the 3 core goals. And I'm going to give you a minute to talk to your table. Do you know what those 3 core goals are? Let's see. I know some of you know them. So let's talk to our tables. What are the 3 goals of dual language? What are the goals of dual language education? What do we want our kids to walk away with? So talk to your table. What are the goals? And some of you are going to cheat and look at the booklet. That's okay. Okay, so what's the first one? And you can just say it. Bilingualism and biliteracy, right? We want our kids to be bilingual and biliterate, to be able to go to a college class in English or in Spanish and be successful, right? But we also want them to be able to communicate fluently in both languages, okay? What's the second one? High academic achievement in both languages, right? Not just in English, but also in Spanish, right? Okay, and what's the last one? Sociocultural competence, which is one of the pillars that a lot of times we kind of put aside, right? Because we're so busy with the standards and making sure that they're speaking the language, which is great. But let's not forget that we can't separate culture from language, right? And we have to be able to teach our kids to live in 2 worlds, even 3 worlds. Yesterday, if you were, like this morning, right? We live in our Spanish world, our English world, but also our bilingual world, okay? So these are the goals, and this is where we want teachers to get their kids to. So with that said, let's go back to our first guiding question. So how do we do that with this journal and with the guiding principles? So at your table, you have a picture or a set of pictures. And what I want us to think about is reflection. How important is reflection in our classrooms? And often we hear said that we learn from experience, right? We hear that a lot. John Dewey actually said, no, not really. We don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on the experiences. Because we can do the same thing over and over again, and what's the definition of insanity? Right? Nothing changes, right? But if we want change to happen, with experience needs to come reflection, okay? So this is the importance of having tools for teachers and students as well to reflect on their learning, on their implementation of practices. So with that, let's look at these pictures, and I'm just going to give you a few seconds to look at them. If you can see them from up there, if not, you have some copies at your tables. And I just want you to let's reflect. Let's think and reflect. Oh, what do you notice? Just think about what you notice. So let's think and reflect. What do you notice? There you go. We'll use this one. Okay, so what do you notice about the pictures? Just, what do you notice? Take a minute and reflect. Don't talk yet, just think. What do you notice? Okay. If you had a few minutes to look at them, or a few seconds to look at them, I want us to stand up, hand up, and pair up with somebody else at a different table, somebody that you don't know. And I want you to think about talk about the things that you noticed in the pictures. So let's stand up, hand up, and high five somebody that you don't know.
High five you.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about it. What do you notice?
We said the colors right away. We said the different, the color shades. The shades of colors was what caught our eye right away.
So no color. Okay. What else? The evolution of the equipment, right? And how some things are still around though. Professions, how they've evolved. Okay. What else? Thank you. And yeah.
Basically the same thing. So what I said is the cars have been updated, the kitchens have been updated, the doctor room has been updated, but your classrooms kind of still look the same sometimes.
So, time for reflection, right? Okay, one last one. Thank you. You know, several people have noticed that there's windows in every picture. And that's somebody that's really thinking deep, right? Okay? And so at the tables, I placed a different set of pictures. So I want you to find it, okay? Just find one, and if you don't have one, I have a few extras. But I placed a different set of pictures, and I want you to compare the first set to the second set. What differences do you notice? You'll know they're different. All right, so let's talk about it. What differences did you notice?
In the classroom, traditional classroom back in the day, and now it's more groups and technology, and even the visuals colorful. It's much better.
So the classroom changed, right? Now it's in groups. Now it's more colorful. Now it's more technology. Okay. What else? Faster, quicker, more efficient, right? Okay.
So even though we have integrated a lot more gadgets and cutesy, colorful stuff, and we think we're doing all these innovative things by putting children in little groups and things like that, really teaching has not changed or evolved as much as we think it has from that time that that picture was taken until now.
So reflecting. Just because we have more tools doesn't necessarily mean we've changed our practice. Okay, that's a good thought. Sure. Yeah, eyesight. Last one, yes, so we can continue.
Kind of go along with what you said, and kind of connect the two. Assuming and overgeneralizing as well, because not every place, just like we know in the United States, has moved up to that picture. There's many, many classrooms that look more like the first one.
Okay, and last one.
Just wanted to bring into summary how in each of the photos, they evolve, and in each of the photos, there are pieces that you would have never seen or never even thought to have had. This is obviously through technology, but even in the classroom, I would have never seen a picture taken from this environment where even the kids were based in here. If anybody can produce a, back in the day, early education class where they took a picture and kids were sitting in a group, let's reproduce that. But that would be that each one of these photos have evolved in their own path.
And all of you have great insight, and that's the purpose of reflection, right? To get us to think through the practices that we see, what we know about instruction, what has been done in the past, what we're expected to do now, the technologies we're supposed to be using, the practices that we're being told that are best practices or promising practices. But without that time to reflect, we're going to continue to do the same thing we've been doing for years, right? Without really putting much thought into, is it working, is it effective, is it efficient, right? What we're doing. So if you will, please thank your partners in your group and return to your tables. Okay? So now at your table, the last piece of discussion for this would be, how does this connect to our work as dual language teachers, administrators, community members? How does this apply to our instruction in the classroom, to our work as dual language teachers? So at your table, discuss with your peers, how does this affect us? How is this relevant for us? Okay, so let's share a couple of things. How is this relevant to our work as dual language teachers? or administrators?
Just the importance of if a program is established with whatever demographics of students and whatever model 20 years ago, reflecting on it and does that still work? Does our population look the same? Do our demographics look the same? Is this the best approach or best model, or are we just doing it because that's how it was initially established?
One more thought? Voluntold?
One of the other aspects we pointed out was the strength of reflection, not only to criticize your teaching and grow from that, but also to reflect on what you are doing that is a good practice and how that is successfully helping your students.
Because teachers work very hard, extremely hard. So it's important to honor the work that they do, right? And to build on the strengths that are already there. We build on strengths, because if we build on strengths, we just get stronger, right? We don't build on deficit, because we want to value and honor all of the work that is put by teachers, administrators, even by students, right? So that's a key point also. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so now with that said, now let's think about how can we do that reflection and what can we use, because we can't ask teachers to reflect without guidance, right? Without, what am I supposed to be reflecting on, or how do I know I'm proficient, right? If we don't have a guide, if we don't have an endpoint, how do we know how to get there? So that is the purpose of the reflection journal that you have at your tables. So if you don't have, which we do have enough for everybody, I was hoping we had enough for everybody, because they're big books and they're really heavy to put on the plane. So if you don't have one, please let us know and we can get you one. So this is the reflection journal. And this was created in collaboration with CAL, the Center for Applied Linguistics, who are the authors of the dual language, the guiding principles for dual language. And CABE partnered with them to create a tool that would be and allow teachers to go through a reflection cycle, not just, a checklist to see are you doing it or not, because we can be doing it, but how do we know we're being effective with it, right? But to have an actual reflection system, a reflection cycle, so that they could take ownership of the implementation of best practices in their classrooms. And with CAL, what we did is, from the rubrics, from the guiding principles, the actual book, we analyzed all of the key points that applied mostly to the classroom, the things that teachers can control in their classrooms, because there's a lot of information on there that is mostly program-based, right? It's about the systems of the program. So teachers, a lot of times, we can't control some of those things, some of those decisions. So we looked for the areas that teachers could control, and then we took those and looked at the exemplary practice, because that's our goal, right? That's where we want to go, right? And then we desegregated that to look at the actual, what would that look like in my practice, right, in a teacher's practice. But then we also rewrote them, okay, in the first person, because this is meant to be a tool for teachers to reflect. And then we rewrote them, so it's coming from the exemplary practices of the guiding principles, but it's written so you can really reflect and use it in your practice. And then we also looked, and if you see right there, okay, it tells you where it was adapted from, what key point. And so this one was adapted from key point 2.2.f, and that means strand 2, which is curriculum, principle 2, key point F. Okay, so if you ever wanted to actually go back to the guiding principles and look and see what it actually says, they're all correlated, and you can find them in the journal. Okay. And then after that, we created a rubric with descriptors for each one of those, so teachers could actually say, okay, identify the areas where they're at and work towards moving to the next level. Okay, and we identify the areas as exemplary practice, proficient practice, developing practice, or novice practice, because we will have teachers at different levels in our schools, right? And we want to support them and guide them to continue to move and grow as educators with best practices for dual language. So that's the way that this was created, and that's just for you to kind of understand a little bit of the background and how and why it was developed. But now in your groups, at your tables, we're going to do a scavenger hunt. I actually want you to explore, and I know some of you already explored it, but now you're going to actually talk about it with your group, okay? And you're going to find the following questions, and let's see who can find them first, okay? So let's see who of you will find all of these questions first? So if you find them, all of them, raise your hand, and then we'll go over the answers, okay? So how many elements are there for each pillar and in total? How are the elements organized? What features are included to help educators navigate the journal? What are the 4 proficiency descriptors, which I already gave you a hint on that one? How does it demonstrate an alignment to the research? And what are the 7 parts that make up each reflection cycle? Ready? Go. And if you need a journal, let me know. I have more. Raise your hand if you guys found them all, so that way we know almost everybody found them. Yes, once you find them all, if you'll just show me a thumbs up, that way we know that you are done. Okay, we have a table that found them all. Okay, so let's see. Would you mind telling us how many elements are there for each pillar?
For the first pillar, there's 10, second 10, third 11, so 31.
Okay, 31 elements, which that's what we're calling them, elements, okay? So if you want to refer to each one, we can refer to them as elements, okay? How are the elements organized?
By pillars?
By pillars.
Bilingualism, by literacy, and social cultural competency.
So if as a teacher, I really would like to work on getting my kids to develop their bilingualism and biliteracy, because maybe I see that my kids are struggling with using the language, right? Maybe I can focus on that area, right? Or maybe if I really want to focus on getting my kids to meet the standards, right? Maybe I can focus on the second pillar, okay? So this is a tool that is meant to be flexible for teachers to use according to the needs of their classrooms and their kids, okay? Now, you said that there's 31 elements. That's a lot, right? It's a lot of elements. And it's impossible to reflect on all of them in 1 year, right? But this is a tool that it's meant to be used throughout the years to help you and also document your own growth, okay? Because this book, you're going to continue to use throughout the years, because maybe this year I focus on one pillar, maybe next year I focus on a different pillar, maybe this year I focus on 2 elements from pillar 1, 2 elements from pillar 2, and 2 elements from pillar 3, okay? So there's a lot of flexibility on how you as a teacher, as a practitioner, can use it, okay? What are the features, or what features are included to help you navigate the journal? Found the answers.
Well, table of contents, then it's divided by pillars, so there's like a page to guide you. And then on the top of each of the pages, you have the pillar that it's attached to, and then it has the guiding principle key point. It has, which is the next point, which is the 4 proficiency descriptors. Then it's broken down into reflection, next steps. Were you able to complete the next steps? The different colors, with the reflection, where are you in that? And what are the next steps after that? So I think I answered a couple of things.
I think you answered most of them, right? Yes, and you're correct. How does it align to the research? What alignment did you find to the research? It's at the bottom, right? At the bottom, there's a connection to where you can find information about that in the guiding principles. So if you actually want to go to the literature review and see what it actually says, you can go back and do that, right? Then there's also the bibliography at the end. So if you want to learn more about it, or if you, maybe with your teacher, if you're a coach, you want to do a book study, or you want to read some articles with your teachers, right? Or in your PLC group, then you can go back to the back and find some resources that are going to help you, okay? And lastly, the 7 elements, right? Which 1, 2, which actually they're not numbered, but the first one would be the top, right? Your element, and then your first part for reflection, which we recommend that teachers, and there's instructions in the front on how to do that. And then also, under each area, you see instructions on what you could do, okay? So it's really very easy to use for teachers or for coaches or anybody that would like to use it. Then we also have, the 2 areas for reflection, okay? The instructions. And the next steps, of course, the connection to the research. And lastly, the opportunity to reflect once again, because we know that we need to check in, right? So this, I would recommend each one of these cycles to last from 4 to 6 weeks, because you really want to give it time to try something, right? Reflect on it and see if it's working or not, and refine it, okay? So each one of these elements would probably take you 4 to 6 weeks to actually go through the cycle, okay? And this is an example, just an example of what you could look like. So if this teacher, for example, she noticed that her expectations for her students were shared orally and observable, but she was not really being intentional about her language objectives, okay? And so this is what she wrote, which again, this part, you don't have to write a story, doesn't have to be a paragraph, it has to be your thoughts. So you want to bullet, you want to write a complete sentence, it's up to you. One time a teacher asked me, can I draw my classroom because that's going to help me? Draw your classroom, you know. However it helps you reflect, all of this is free for you to use as you need, okay? And then also, this would be her next steps, which she noticed. She was actually making connections to her language objective, but she wasn't sharing it with kids. She was sharing it at the beginning, but she was not referring to it, and she was not referring it to it throughout. Okay? So she felt that she really needed to be more intentional about expressing and letting kids know what they were working on language. And so this was going to be her focus for those 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, so this is just an example of what it could look like. And the instructions will be available for you on the app. I sent them in, so I'm not sure if they're on there or not, but they will be on the app if you want to have the directions and the steps, okay? Because and the presentation, yes. And you'll also have access to the actual reflection tool on PDF, okay? All right, so who's the dual language teacher reflection journal for? So at your table, just discuss who can benefit from this. Who would benefit from using this tool, and for what purposes would you use it? Okay, so let's talk about it and let's share ideas, because this is the meat of it, right? What would you do in your classroom or in your school? How could you use this, and for what purposes, and who would it benefit?
Everybody.
That's a good answer, everybody, right? And for what purposes? Getting my steps in.
So I was thinking, I'm an administrator of a school, and we're really working on making sure that our language targets are visible, that students can articulate them, they know exactly what language target they're working towards, especially with our special teachers and other teachers, the interventionists, because it should be a school-wide initiative, and so we could probably pick out certain elements in the guide or the reflection book to reflect on during our LC, and then everyone makes some next steps and what are their strengths and what do they need to do to improve that, so that we actually are aligning this throughout our entire school.
Yes, for program alignment, right? For instruction alignment across grade levels. And I like what you said, reflect where everybody is, because maybe you have some teachers, which you will, have some teachers that are really proficient with that one element, right? And then the rest of your teachers can learn from those teachers that are already doing it. And then the collaboration can start, right? So this is gonna really help to identify your areas of strength as well, right? But then also to support you in aligning those practices so that your whole site, right, is working towards the same goals, okay?
Lo voy a decir en español. La reflexión es muy importante en nuestras vidas. Tú reflexionas en tu vida personal, en tu vida profesional, en tu vida como matrimonio, en tu vida como esposa, en tu vida como hija. Y me gustó esta parte de la reflexión, porque aunque uno tenga más de 20 años trabajando y crea uno que lo sabe todo, no es cierto. Hay que reflexionar cada día sobre los cambios y lo que uno puede hacer en cada parte de su vida.
Yes, because to follow up with that, it's true. We saw the pictures, right? Life is not the same now than it was 30, even 20 years ago, right? And how are we reflecting on the change in our practice? But then also, how are we valuing what was done before that still works, right? We don't throw everything out the window. We build on what's already there. We build on the knowledge from before, on prior knowledge, right? Even on practices. So let's not get rid of everything, but let's reflect on how we continue to grow and build, especially with new technology, especially because teaching requires new skills, not just from kids, but also from teachers, from us, right? If they need to use the computer well, as a teacher, I need to be able to teach them and support them with that. So our reflection, as in, like, what's her name? Like Frida said, reflection happens in all aspects of our lives, but most importantly also in our profession.
Well, you make a really valid point. I was thinking about this, the spirited discussion that we were having about the classroom, and I think many times we look at that black and white classroom as if it was a horrible, horrible thing, and it not necessarily is. It's just we as educators are building on. And I think so many times in education we feel like we have to throw everything out instead of building on the foundation of what John Dewey was talking about even. So.
Thank you. And if we had, this is a whole day training, if we had more time, we would be doing a lot more on that, right? But it's really just to get you to think about the importance and the place of reflection in our practice, in our classrooms, in our daily lives, right? But then also as a system. Okay, because a lot of times when I talk to teachers, they're like, well, yeah, I reflect all the time after my lesson, then I think about how it went. But systematically, are we reflecting intentionally, right, for the purpose of focusing on the areas where we need to grow, okay? So it's a different type of reflection. It's about being more systematic about and intentional about how can we continue to grow as educators, but also how can we continue to support our kids in our programs. Okay, so I really want you to think about it, because a lot of times when we get tools like this, right, we're like, oh, this is a great tool, but when do we have time, right? It's a great tool, but we don't have time. And sometimes we have to reflect and think, well, we want to make the time, because if we make the time, then we're going to be more efficient, right? And sometimes we have to invest the time in the areas that we know impact instruction, which one of them is reflection, okay? Reflection has a great impact on student outcomes, according to the research. So we want to focus on those practices that research supports, because once again, all these elements and the recommendations is not what CABE says, is not what Cal says, is what the research says, okay? Is what has, there's evidence of success in schools and in classrooms. So let's take time out of what we do in the classroom and what we do in our schools to support teachers into becoming those reflective practitioners, okay? Because we know that in the end, it's gonna impact instruction and it's gonna support our kids. Right? So I'm going to leave you with that thought before we move to the next part, which this will be, I'm actually going to give you, these are just some ideas of who could use it. Some of you have, some programs have a partner English teacher, right? Somebody that is not bilingual, but still a dual language teacher, because they support the kids in the dual language program. These practices, they would need to know what are they doing in the classroom? What are the best practices for language learning, right? So they could benefit. TOSAs, administrators, instructional coaches, your school board, right? They could benefit from understanding the practices that research recommends, because then they could support you with the resources that you need, right, to implement these practices. So think about all those stakeholders that you could share the information with. And finally, for this part, one thing that I want to focus on is how can you as stakeholders support your teachers to become exemplary dual language teachers. So if you're a teacher, right? Or if you're administrator, really quick, have a discussion at your table. How can we support teachers with this tool? Okay? How can we support their instruction? How can we support them to implement these practices in their schools? Or as a teacher, how would you want to be supported? Okay, what would you want? Let's dream big, okay? And because if we don't say it, all right, we don't put it out there, it doesn't happen. So we have to put it out there. So what would you like your administrators to do to support you with this? Okay? So I'll give you a couple of minutes. So who would like to share? Remember, we're taking risks.
It's an easy risk, though, as an administrator. Listen. Listen to teachers is the type of support that we could offer. I think that's a step in what is being faced in the classroom. Understanding where our teachers are coming from to move forward and making what they're saying and telling us, make it into reality for them and for our schools.
Thank you. Very true, right? And when we say, okay, you're now going to be a dual language teacher, right? Now you're going to teach everything. Now you're going to teach in Spanish and in English. It's not that easy, right? Look at the book in front of you, right? There's so much more that goes into it. And the support is needed. And like you said, and teachers need to be heard, right? When they're saying, okay, there's too much, I need support, right? And providing the time and providing the resources that they need. So thank you so much for that, yes, advocating for teachers, because when we advocate for teachers, we're advocating for kids too, okay? All right, one more thought?
At our table, we were talking about just looking through some of these pillars and the elements about how teachers need, like as a school district or administrators or coaches, how this could be used to provide training for teachers, very specific training, because we can look at they can look at this book and see what it is that they know, that they're doing or not doing, but it's, do they know how to do it? And so many times we provide training on just an overview of something and telling them how important something is, but not specific ways that they can apply these things in their classroom, like, strategies or how to use it in their teaching. So I think it could be used in that way, because teachers teach all day, and they want to do well, and sometimes they just don't know how to do something. So it's providing that training. So we kind of dissected how that could be done here.
So can you share some of the ideas you came up with?
Well, we talked about having teachers that are particularly good at something give trainings. The coaches, we know everybody doesn't have coaches on their campuses, but coaches providing training. Yeah, and just as a district as well, giving just more specific trainings and, to teachers on what they can do.
Yes, because this can help you focus your professional development initiatives, right? Because sometimes we're like, okay, so teachers want training, but there's so much out that they can get, right? So this can help you identify those areas. Teachers can get together and say, look, we want training on this element right here, right? So it can be targeted and it can be intentional. So again, listening to what the teachers need, right? But then also being intentional and being strategic about the support that you're providing. And also, like you said, the ongoing support. We go to one training one day and we get how much % of it, right? In one sitting. And then we turn around and reality hits and we're busy and our kids need and we have assessments and we have standards and the importance of providing that ongoing support, that coaching and that mentoring from your teachers that are proficient in a lot of these areas. So really thinking about how can we dig deep into the type of support that we can provide.
I just wanted to elaborate a little more about your comment, because there are ways to do it, and yes, absolutely, we have to listen to our teachers, and these guiding principles are the beginning, but we cannot expect the teachers to do it without the proper training. One of the things that I'm trying in my school, I'm an administrator, one of the things that I'm trying with my teachers is to provide trainings at the site. I have wonderful teachers, like in every school. We have teachers that are excelling at teaching in a specific part of the program, like how to teach oracy or the bridge, or something like that. They are experts. So what I do is I get subs for a grade level, and then these grade level teachers go and observe that wonderful teacher, and then they have the time to debrief and then go back and teach. Then later, as an administrator, I can come and expect that needs to be done because the training is provided. But I cannot expect my teachers to do it if I have not provided the training. So I think that is one way to keep bringing more awareness and preparation.
Thank you so much. And these are great conversations to have, especially when we have administrators in the room, right? You had a thought?
Thank you. So I work for the Embassy of Spain, and we have a bilingual program there called ISA. What was that? Olivia, I forgot. International Spanish Academies. And what I found is that it is quite easy to work with schools. So we have about 130 schools, bilingual schools in that program in the States and Canada. And I found that it's quite easy to work with the schools when the principals and administrators are convinced of the benefits of bilingual dual education. And not only the principals and administrators, but also the whole community and the whole staff, right? It's sometimes hard to fight against some prejudices on the part of the staff, of the non-bilingual teachers, and so I think we can do more than so. It's not only teachers reflecting on their teaching, which is really interesting and positive, but also administrators and the whole of the community reflecting on what they can do and what they. Of course, we can listen to our teachers, but we should do. We should be proactive. So we are the administrators. We are in the lead. So we should be in the lead, and we should be convinced of the benefits and work on that. And so at this point, I'm thinking if we should have a reflection journal for administrators and principals. So, yeah.
Which, just for your information, this one document took over 2 years to build. So it's been a long process, and in the works or in the idea bank is support for support for administrators as well. So stay tuned, maybe a couple more years. We'll hopefully less, right? But thank you. But you are very right, which I heard a conversation here earlier. How many of you are a strand within a school? So you have a dual language program, but it's not a full implementation, full campus implementation. You probably have 2 grades or 1 grade level at each grade classroom at each grade level, right? And how many of you find it difficult sometimes to collaborate with your peers that are not dual language teachers? And a lot of times that happens, right? And what about your office staff? Right? That sometimes they don't understand exactly what it is, or maybe your special education staff, or maybe your interventionists that don't understand why they can't always provide the support in English, right? And why we need somebody to provide support in Spanish, right? So imagine that you use this tool also to build their capacity, right? And to reflect on the practices that if you serve or if you work in a campus where you have dual language students, you are in a dual language environment, and you need to be aware of what that means, right? So building the capacity of your whole staff, right, as well as your dual language teachers. So thank you for that comment. So a couple of things, just information for you. It's also great for administrators, for everybody else, for parents, right? Can we demonstrate some of these strategies for our parents to understand what it's like to be in a dual language classroom as well? Word of caution, these were not meant to be for evaluation. And it says that in I think page 3. Okay, this is not meant for the administrator to say, okay, let me see what you're supposed to be doing. Nope, not happening, okay? This is meant to be a tool, because if we use it for evaluation purposes, teachers are gonna put it away, or they're gonna write what you want them to write, okay? They're not gonna write what they wanna write. Okay, so let's be careful with that part. And it's not for compliance. It's not, okay, well, you have to reflect on these because, and then I need to see evidence. We want it to be a tool that teachers embrace. So how you roll that out in your schools or your sites, just being intentional about giving teachers the agency to control their thoughts, right? To to really share what they feel, what they think on the journal. And lastly, we believe that it's up to the teachers if they want to share their thoughts or not, because this is personal. I don't know if you've noticed, but teaching is very personal, right? And what happens in my classroom, it's hard to build to that level of trust to where I can share my fears or my anxieties, right? And we have to build that safe space, that safe zone. So the goal is that as administrators or as team members in your teams, that you're building that trust so that we can feel comfortable sharing our thoughts and our reflections, right? But also giving teachers the option of sharing only what they feel comfortable sharing, right? And also I would, as a coach, when I was a coach, I would sometimes tell teachers, okay, so this is just for you. If you want me to see it, then I'm very happy to give you feedback, but if not, I want you to just tell me what you think about, after you reflect. Because we want them to have that safety and that freedom, right? To be reflective practitioners. So just some thoughts about our ideas. So we're running out of time, but I did want to give you a little bit of time to just go through the pillars and find what are the practices? What are we asking teachers to do? So I'm going to ask, let's see, this table, these 4 tables, 5 tables, this right here. You guys look at pillar 1. Just look at pillar 1 and look at the elements and what are they asking teachers to do. So these tables right here, okay? Look at pillar 2, and then you guys in the back, the row back there, look at pillar 3, okay? So let's identify some of the practices that we want teachers to do. So now let's look at the elements. And we'll spend about, let's see how much time we have. We'll spend about 6 minutes looking through them, which is, I know it's not enough time, but at least you get to browse through them, okay? And it is okay to talk with your table. Okay, I know it's not enough time and you probably want to get back to your school and share with your peers, but so what are some of the things that you saw in the journal that interest you or that you found these are good areas to focus on, or that maybe what surprised you? What did you maybe not know about what best practices for dual language are? I'll take 2 comments. I'm good at wait time. Anybody? I heard really good conversation, so I know you have something to share.
Let me try. Yeah, okay. I like this point. I like this point about in page number 20 about the metalinguistic and metacognitive skills. And the definition is in the bottom. And I know that a teacher, you need to know both meanings. Because if you can go to the practice with those meanings, you can do a lot of things with your students. And if your student speaks both language, and they can take metacognitive skills and metalinguistic skills, they can do a lot of things in their life, not only in the school. And first, when you, like a teacher, you need to know these meanings and how to do with them. And I love this part of the pillar number 1, that is bilingualism and biliteracy.
Thank you. So the cross-linguistic transfer, right? Which I know we've heard a lot in the past hour or hours, right? So and it's in there, and it's what the research recommends, okay? One last one.
And I guess I'm going to ask this question because for years we have implemented dual language in my school. And one of the things, and it depends, I guess, on the model, the dual language model. But when you teach students in 2 languages, obviously you are spending time in English and some time in the other language. And we were talking about the high academic achievement. Is it really the expectation that in 3rd grade our kids, when they are tested in English, they are supposed to be at a standard? And I'm speaking from Washington State, but I wonder about other states, because obviously we are teaching the kids in 2 languages, so we expect the kids to be educated for life, not only for the test in 3rd grade or 4th grade. But is it the same everywhere?
Before I respond, any thoughts on that?
So I think, at least in Wisconsin, it's the same, and we've had these discussions before. The director that we work for our DLI program has talked a lot about how that trajectory of achievement really looks different for our DLI kids. And so, on our state standardized tests, they just, they want you to grow like this, but with our DLI students, that trajectory looks different, and it might be more like this a little later. And I don't think that the testing companies are taking that into consideration. The state isn't when they look at your test scores, and I think that's a common problem across the country. I don't think it's just our 2 states.
So then, and you'll probably help me answer that, but this brings us to how can we use this journal to advocate for the program and for what the research says, right, about the program and about language acquisition, especially in a biliteracy.
I'm sorry, your question popped up when I had wanted to answer your question. I'm from Texas, and you'll see a variety of programs throughout Texas. And the district that I am in, our dual language program is a 90-10 model in the K-5 environment, and then jumps up into the middle school, and it's completely opposite. So kids are thrown back into an English classroom with electives. So I have 8th graders. Our program ends with 8th graders taking the College Board AP Spanish test for credit. So we had to jump to a different goal set for the kids. This is a rather new program within our district, and like I said, you'll find different models throughout Texas, depending on the population. So us too. Our testing covers a Spanish version up until the 5th grade, and it drops. There is no Spanish version of our state assessments for our secondary grade levels, 6 all the way through high school.
Kind of piggybacking off of what she said, and it's, as a teacher, it's frustrating because we have newcomers, but they're expected to take the English-only test, and they have no ability to do the Spanish. So when they get tested, of course, they're not going to do so well because they don't know the language yet. So that's what we're trying to change, but it's going to be a lot of push.
And it is, but the best tool that we have is the research, right? And being informed and informing others of what its dual language requires. So that's where we go into, let's take all this information and let's share it. Let's make sure that our stakeholders are aware of what it takes, right? Let's train them on this reflection tool, but let's also look at the guiding principles. I know that we recommend that dual language programs have a district leadership team that's made up of administrators, district administrators, teachers, parents, stakeholders at different levels that are going to study what the research says, so we can better support our programs. So let's take all of this information and to close up, and I'll stay if you have any other questions for a few minutes, but if you can now show me with your hands, how do you feel now about what the guiding principles say about best practices? We see growth, okay. We see growth, which that's what we focus on, right? Growth. Okay, so just for you to know, this will be available because we just finalized it, the cover, so this will be available on our website on gocabe.org, latest by January of next year, and it will also, which it's not, but it will also be on the app. So the PDF file of this, because this is something that's going to be available, okay? We are going to share with our partners as well, with Cal and also with Dual Language New Mexico, so that it's available for you to use. It's a tool, so please, please take advantage of it and use it. And finally, if you have any questions, or if for some reason, share with us, right, how it's going. We want to know what the work is out there, and we want to get ideas from you guys once you start using it, okay? So please share with us. And social media is a great way to do that and stay connected with our peers. And finally, if you have any questions, or for some reason it doesn't pop up on the app, here is my email. Just email me and we can send you the files. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for giving your time, right, to think about how you can support your students and your teachers. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And I do have a few extra copies of the journal because I don't want to take them on the plane.